Senator King, since you voted earlier today, the president has said he's open to a, quote, prorated down payment on a border wall. He says he'll reopen the government 3 weeks if Democrats agree to that. Are you entirely clear on what that actually means? Would you support it?
Well, I am unclear on what it actually means, but the concept is that he's still trying to bargain about opening the government. And part of the whole purpose of what we were talking about today is let's get the government open, take a deep breath, consider his proposal in a rational, reasonable process way, and come to some conclusion that I think we're going to be able to work something out that he can support. But he's putting on this extra condition, which is basically saying, you know, he's doling out of time, and we're talking about people's lives here, Anderson. That's what's been missing somewhat. I mean, these are real people's lives. We've got Coast Guard people in Maine who are going to food banks.
I mean, more senators voted today in favor of the Democrats' plan, which didn't have wall funding, than for the president's plan. Neither plan got the 60 votes needed to end debate. Right. But do you believe unity among Senate Republicans is in any way starting to fracture? Majority Leader McConnell is under more pressure?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't put it that way. I would just say that everybody in the Senate wants this thing solved. And one of the indications of that is that after the two amendments failed, Ben Cardin of Maryland put in an amendment that's just a simple 3-week continuing resolution. And we all stood up and talked about a commitment. There were, I think, 15 of us that spoke on the floor. I was one of them that said, look, I'm for border security, and I'm willing to work in good faith on a solution. As I left the floor, I asked Ben Cardin, and he had, I think he had 5 Republican co-sponsors at that time, and I think there are more to come. Everybody wants to get to a solution here, and I just wish the president would put a little faith in the process. And you know, he came in with a budget last January, Anderson, for $1.6 billion for border security. And he got it. It went through the Appropriations Committee. It was approved. It was in the bill that went through the Senate, the Senate Appropriations Committee and the House Appropriations Committee. And so I guess what I'm saying is that's evidence that we can act in good faith and we can do something serious about border security. Will it be 5.7 or 2.8 or 6 point? You know, I'm not going to negotiate here on television, but I think there's room to reach a reasonable accommodation.
But it was clear, I mean, he backed off that after getting criticism essentially from, you know, right-wing radio and television that it wasn't following through on his promise to build a wall. Why would he give up leverage of the, you know, or alleged leverage of the actual shutdown if he doesn't feel he's going to get some sort of a wall?
Remember, we're not talking about full funding of the government until September, which is what we ought to be doing, but we're talking about 3 weeks. And we're basically saying, lay the hammer aside and let us work on it for 3 weeks in good faith, and let's see what we can come up with. In the meantime, let's let these good people get paid, go back to work, do what they ought to do. And if it doesn't work out, you know, he's still got that that tool, right, which I think is inappropriate, by the way. It's a terrible way to govern, but he's not really giving up that much. He's just giving Congress a chance to try to digest what it is he's asking for.
CNN's reporting that the White House is preparing a draft national emergency declaration for the president to sign in order to use military funding to build a wall. Would that at this point be the easiest way to actually end the shutdown? It would almost surely end up in court, but wouldn't it get the government reopened right away?
Well, it probably would. It's good news and bad news. And good news is that it would almost certainly end the shutdown. It's bad news in that this isn't the way our system is designed. The Constitution says money spent is appropriated by Congress, and that's one of our fundamental functions. And to establish a precedent that the president can basically decree a national emergency and then do whatever he or she wants in the terms of policy that they can't get through the Congress is a terrible precedent, and to me it's a gross violation of constitutional principles. So they may be looking in that direction, and as I say, in the short term, you'd say, oh good, the shutdown's over, and that's a good thing for sure. But if that's the solution, boy, is it a dangerous way. This is exactly what the framers were worried about. They didn't want a monarch. They wanted a constitutional democracy, and they wanted a president and checks and balances, and they purposefully put the power of the purse in the Congress, and that's the way it ought to be.
Senator King, I appreciate your time. Thank you.